Okay, are you thinking about moving to Spain but thinking it's just going to be super cheap and dandy? Well, you might want to think again, because here are going to be some of the hidden costs that you're going to want to keep an eye out. When we first moved to Spain, I thought we had the budget perfectly set out. I had it down to the T of what we were going to be spending our money on, but in the end, we had some unexpected costs come up, and so I kind of want to explain that to you so that way if you decide to make that move to coming over here to Spain, you don't have to worry about that. On top of that, when we did our budget, I also did put in there a little bit of a fluff or miscellaneous category, just in case if some things came up, we were prepared for that and aware of it, so that way we weren't completely blown out of the water. So the first section is just gonna be like residency and visa fees. So when you decide to move over here, and especially if you're doing it through like a visa, like a digital nomad visa or a non-lucrative visa, you're gonna have to pay some of those fees. Whether you do it yourself or whether you hire a lawyer, you're gonna have some of those fees creeping up. And so if you're aware of those total costs, it's gonna help. We ended up hiring a lawyer and I thought it was super helpful and totally worth the charge. And we probably ended up spending a little over $2,000 after everything was said and done. But the lawyer was able to handle all of the paperwork with the government, set up the appointments for us, and make it just a lot easier of a process. Now, there were some other extra little fees that ended up coming up. We had to go and print some extra documents. We had to go and sign some extra paperwork. So there's gonna be a few extra little costs, so maybe just fluff up that budget to extra $100 just to make sure you're covered perfectly. The second portion of that is just gonna be your housing and furnishing costs when you decide to get a long-term place. So when we were over here, we were looking for about 6 to 8 weeks, and we had to get Airbnbs during that time. So you can definitely go on the cheaper end or on the high end. We probably ended up spending about $1,000 to $1,500 for like a 2-week stay. And then when we decided to get our long-term place, most of the places that we were looking at were requiring about 2 months of a deposit up front along with the first month's rent. Now, some places are only gonna require like a 1-month deposit, but it's better to be on the safe side. And so if you end up finding an apartment that's about $1,500, that's gonna be about $4,500 up front. And that doesn't even include the furnishings if you're gonna have to get that. A lot of places that we were looking at didn't have all the furnishings. And so if that's the case, you got to spend a couple $100s on a couch, on a bed, on a table. So just keep that in mind that you might spend a couple $1,000s on top of the deposit and the month rent in order to get the house furnished so that way it's livable for you. Number 3 is going to be about private health insurance. Now, we still don't have that, and some visas don't require that you have private health insurance. But if you also want to be cautious, then you might want to get private health insurance. From the quotes that we've been looking at, it's going to be anywhere from about $50 to $100 a month for one individual. And that's comprehensive. That includes everything, no copays. And so the Spanish healthcare system out here is actually really good. If you're going through the digital nomad route, you actually don't need to end up getting private health insurance, just because you end up paying taxes into the Social Security system, so you end up getting on the public healthcare system. But if you want private healthcare on top of that, then expect to pay that $50 to $100 a month extra. Number 4 is gonna be about transportation. So obviously you have the flight coming over here, and then you're gonna have any sort of Ubers or trains or buses that you're gonna be taking from the airport to your either short-term stay or your long-term stay. Now, when we first got over here, we obviously had our flight, but then we also ended up getting rental cars to take us to our next place, return that rental car, stay in that area for a little bit, and then get a rental car to our next place. Our whole process with coming out here to Spain is we didn't want a car anymore. We are totally fine with the public transportation because we are going to be living in the city, and so we didn't really care to have a car. We might end up getting a moped down the road, and that's something that we're interested in, just because then if we want to be able to go out to do different little hikes or go off on little smaller adventures that maybe a bus or a train can't get us there that easily, then that's super accessible for us. But other than that, you can get around just fine with the bus and the train system. A couple of friends that came out here with us ended up going from using the train system to a couple of the different cities that we were looking at, and they said it was phenomenal. So I would maybe expect to spend, if you're first getting there and you're moving around and using rental cars and stuff or Ubers, probably about $500 or more. But if you're just gonna be settling in a place, then expect to maybe spend about $50 to $150 a month on transportation, like buses, metro, and if you decide to get like a moped or something. Number 5 is gonna be about eating out. Now, when we first came over here, we were eating out most of the time. And since then, since we found our long-term stay, we have completely come back because now we're just living here in Spain as normal. So we're not going to be eating out all the time. But when we were going out to eat to like a cafe or to get tapas or to a restaurant, we were spending about $10, $12 at a cafe for both of us. For lunch or tapas, about $20 for both of us. And then at a restaurant, I would say about $30, $40 for both of us. It can get a little bit pricier, especially if you're going to more tourist places. So just keep that in mind. It's not gonna necessarily be cheap, even though it is a cheaper place to live. And I would probably expect to spend around $200 to $300 a month on going out to eat once you're kind of in a more long-term stay. And lastly, just a bonus tip on budgeting smartly, just watch a couple videos on what it's like and the cost of living here in Spain. That's what we did a couple months leading to us moving out here to Spain, and that helped us tremendously on figuring out how much we're gonna need for the whole move when it comes to getting everything sold, getting all the paperwork, all the visa stuff, getting all the things worked out with our dog, our flight, our short-term lodging. All of those costs, along with a couple of extra fees like paying the month of deposits, paying the first month rent, and getting the house situated, was roughly about $12,000. Now you can do that for much cheaper, especially if you're by yourself and if you don't have a dog, but we wanted to go into the mindset of like, we wanna make sure that we're budgeting, that we're not spending everything out there, but at the same time, we weren't just gonna be completely like short-ending ourselves and getting crappy Airbnbs and whatever. So hopefully this helps. If it does, hit that subscribe button so you can stay tuned on more content of what it's like as an American living out here in Spain. And stay tuned, because I think you might like this video.